Hello, all, and welcome to another episode of So You're Living in a Simulation. I'm your hostess, Jolie, aka your one black friend. So today's episode is going to be just a slight deviation from the norm. It's still very much on track. Last week's episode did really well. And so I kind of wanted to build on that, but also support the discussions of that episode, the illusion of masculinity, masculinity as a performance, dominance versus submission. And ultimately, the underlining idea is that we're all human beings, whether male or female, having a lived experience. So we're going to shift to a parallel. First and foremost, I want to say that this episode will be dedicated to the men and women who have served our country, the veterans, not just this country, but around the world. We'll call them our warrior class. I like the term warrior class because historically has always existed, right? They are the protectors of society. The reason why I stopped short of saying protecting our freedoms is because, well, many of us know that that was just a line sold not just to us, the civilians, but also to them. But just as there are philosophers and always have been, just as there are healers and always have been, just as there are politicians, unfortunately, and always have been, there's always been warriors. The ones that get up and go and fight and do battle, because that's what's called for them. This world, as I've always said, is a dystopia. From a very young age, depending on where you grew up, likely if you grew up in the West, you are sold a narrative, you're sold a construct, you're sold, if you will, the image of a simulation of black and white, wrong and right, good and bad, absolute morality. You know the good guys, and you know the bad guys. And as you get older, as you mature, as you wake up, as you start to pay attention, you start to realize that things aren't what they seem. Ever since I had my first Instagram page, which was, as many of you who've been following me for a very long time know, it was called Animoli. I've always seemed to have attracted, with my content, veterans. And I think the reason why is because while most people who are drawn to this kind of work, this kind of content, things that make you think, question the nature of our reality, while we sort of come to this path through observation, slowly. I mean, sometimes things happen to us that make us pause, but it's a gradual sort of progression. So for me, I know that I've had so many experiences in life, but it was gradual, right? I was always aware. I was always observing that what we are told about things isn't what actually is. But I was granted the grace of time and with very little violence. Oftentimes with veterans, particularly combat veterans, they walk into service believing one thing about reality. And then when they go to war, they see something else entirely. And it's done in the most violent and aggressive way, in a way that is destabilizing, in a way that is disillusioning, if that's a word, in a way that could drive a person mad. So you're taught, particularly in the West, that the powers that be actually care about you. Then they turn you into a weapon, and then they put you in a war zone. And then you're just stripped of your humanity, and then shown the worst of humanity. And it's not just you, it's you and peers and people you've just met who, yeah, maybe we're looking for adventure. Maybe they're looking for something to do. Maybe they couldn't afford to go to university. And so they wanted a way to pay for university to better themselves. And all of a sudden, they are in something that can only be defined as a hellscape. People who have lived through war, and I should say, I guess, trigger warning, not just as fighters, but also on the opposite end as well, will have experienced and have experienced the absolute worst that this reality has to offer. My mother survived the Biafran War. She still talks about this. She's approaching 70. She still talks about it to this day. The memory is fresh in her mind. The things that she had to see from a very young age as a child. She wasn't granted what you would expect this world, if it wasn't a dystopia, to grant a child: safety, a trauma-free upbringing. She lived through a genocide, the Biafran War, and it affected the way she raised me, and it affected the way I grew up. And you kind of see parallels with soldiers. And I think the reason why a lot of veterans are drawn to the content of this podcast is because when you experience something like that, you do kind of go up, look up and go, well, what the fuck is this world then? Because your perception of reality is violently, I don't even think violent is a strong enough word. It's violently, though, ripped from your mind. The concept of who you are and what you are is violently ripped from your mind. And you are giving no way to cope as it's happening to you in real time. So you have an illusion. You grow up in the illusion of this is what the world is. And then you are told this is what the military is. And then all of a sudden you see this, which is a direct, diametrically opposite of this, the illusion. It's hell. When they say war is hell, it is absolutely hell. I have not lived through hell in that way. But in order to understand people who have served and their psychology, I did a deep dive. I got several books on the topic, and I will find just a few of them for you that I've been reading. So I've read, starting with number 1, Where Cowards Go to Die by Benjamin Sledge. Then I read American Mercenary by Daniel Corbett. Then I read Jarhead, and I read Zero Footprint by Simon Chase. There's still several others sitting in my library: The Power of Awareness, Left on Bang, Extreme Ownership, Special Operations Mindset, What It's Like to Go to War, War and the Soul. So I intend to finish all of those, by the end of next month, by the end of June. But I wanted to understand the psychology of what it's like to live through hell. Like, truly. Like, I do think daily existence can be hellish. So it's not to say that if you're not having those sort of experiences, that we're not suffering, because existence is suffering. But I also believe in there being levels of it, and they are living through whatever, I don't know if it's the highest level of hell or the lowest level of hell, but they have lived through that. And then they're pulled from that and then put right back into an illusion, given no coping mechanism. Just, it's almost like living in a dream, waking up, realizing, oh shit, like I'm in a dream, right? And then getting thrown into a nightmare and then having to survive the nightmare. And every day you wake up in a nightmare for months, some for years. And then you come back. But then you know that what you're coming back to is a dream. But because your psyche has been fundamentally altered and changed, and your understanding of who you are as a person has been challenged, you can't exist in this dream anymore. So a lot of them will actually just go back to the nightmare. And I would make the argument that that's done intentionally, that the people, I'm being very mindful of what I say, because one, I'll just get shadow banned again, and like, we know how these things go, but also just the time period that we're in. But I think that the reason why these individuals are weaponized and then sent off to hell and then brought back, and then they're not deprogrammed and they're not offered psychological support, emotional support, spiritual support, is because those who sent them to hell in the first place know that they will have a hard time adjusting back to the illusion, which isn't pleasant in itself, right? It's like living in a gilded cage. The 9 to 5 desk job, the vapid sort of shallow existence of, oh, I'm gonna go sit in a car, drive to work, work a 9 to 5 doing some repetitive bullshit that I'm not actually enjoying so I can like make money to pay bills to pedophiles. I'm laughing because it's true. They've seen it. They understand. That's difficult. That is a very difficult experience to have as a human being. And then it's no wonder why a lot of them end existence for themselves. And I feel that it's by design that many of them end up re-enlisting or volunteering to go back because all the bodies are needed, the weapons are needed. Whoever constructed this whole system for them had to know that, of course, you don't deprogram them. Of course, when they come back, they're not going to adjust. And that's the point. If they don't adjust and don't adapt, then we will have the soldiers that we need to fight bullshit wars. War is bullshit as it's fought now. It's absolute bullshit. But it's not the fault of the warriors. They've always existed as a class of humanity. Just like I said, just as they're healers, they're warriors, they've always existed. How they are being used, well, that's something else entirely. You got a chess piece, you got a chessboard, right? And if I move one piece here, like there's a king, there's a queen, there's a pawn, there's this, that, and the other. But each piece will always have its function. How I move the pieces is not a reflection on the worth of the pieces. The pieces will always serve their function. And what I want to say is you don't have to go back to that. If you have served in hell and then you come back and it's hard to reacclimate and you think that people will think that you're a monster, and these are just sort of the things that I'm reading and also from having conversations with veterans as well. That's by design, right? Because if the people moving their pieces genuinely cared about how these people adapt when they come back, they would not only offer support, proper support for them to reintegrate into society, but they would also offer support, proper support to their family members and their loved ones as well. There would be dedicated workers educating and informing members of our society as to how to pull these warriors, these protectors, back in to the whole. It's not their fault what they become when they're sent out. It's how they're used. The peace will always be the peace. And so I hope that if you're a veteran and you are listening to this, and I know like some of my line sister, shout out to Dina, she lived through the Afghanistan war. She came back with PTSD and she's doing really well to the best of her ability, raising a child on her own to the best of her ability. But a lot of people aren't processing it because they're not given the right tools, the right framework, the right support system to process that jarring experience. Because it's like being disillusioned. It's like seeing reality for what it actually fucking is, aggressively, very quickly, and then no proper framework. You have to just manage that shit on your own. Like, fucking hell. I can't imagine. And in a very short amount of time, I can't imagine. You can't imagine. You can just listen. Anyway, I will say this. As I read each of these books, I noticed a particular structure. So we're gonna seg a bit because this is about relationships. It's called Love and War, right? So I noticed that a lot of these books tend to be set up in the same way. So the men, when they write about how, the beginning of their story and then their hellish experiences. And then at the end, they will mention like a woman, a female partner. And a lot of the time, they're ending the stories in the same way. It's that, well, the women that they left at home waiting for them eventually left them. It was a recurring theme. And I know from conversations that I've had with veterans who have a hard time sustaining connections with their female partners, you start to understand that there is an expectation that they want their female partners to hold, to live up to. They've cast their female partners in a particular way because that's what society tells them, right? Your partner, as a man, your female partner isn't even like an autonomous human being. Her job is to center your problems, your pain. You go out in the world, you do your thing, you do battle, then you come home, and then she's just supposed to be there, feed you, care for you, sit in silence, absorb your pain, and heal you. The problem with that is that while femininity is inherently healing, there is a dehumanizing effect that is occurring in that reality. So a lot of men are going off to war with the expectation that they can go and then their partners should be back there waiting for them. And a lot of the times when I'm remembering when reading these stories, these guys are signing up twice, which, as I explained, like well, if you turn a person into a weapon and then you don't give them appropriate ways to readjust to society, and they start to believe that society is judging them or that they're no longer fit to exist in this reality, which I don't think anybody is, that we're not meant for this. But there's nobody there to talk them through it. And they feel like, well, the only thing I could do is to go back and continue to be a weapon. Or some of them actually have a death wish because of survivor's guilt, because of just what the fuck they experience. Like, it's better in their minds. They feel like it's better to just put themselves in harm's way again and let fate take the wheel. And then if they die in that way, in the way that they've seen other people die, at least it stops the pain of existence. You have a choice. That is by design. You have a choice. But to go back, a consistent pattern I noticed was that the men would go off to war and then they would write about the women who cheated on them or left them for another, man or whatever, this, that, and the other. And I'm reading this as a female and I'm like, okay, but she's living her life too. It's not, don't turn it off. Hear me out. I wrote an article about this on Medium, and I will read it to you guys in real time. How I started the article was that life is a battlefield. On a day-to-day basis, we are all fighting shit. We are all going through pain. Existence is a bitch. Are there moments of happiness? Yes, absolutely. But we're going through it. The system puts an undue amount of pressure on women to not be seen as equals, but to be seen as literally base camp. I'm going to use war analogy in this episode, base camp. But base camp isn't even like a living being. It's just camp. So men are socialized to see women as, I come home to you, you care for me after I've lived life. And women are like, but I want a partner to go through life with together. And there's a disconnect there. And I'm not seeing that only with veterans. I'm seeing that across the board. A lot of the time, when there are relationship problems, it's because of this right here. Women not being seen as also having a lived experience. We are conditioned to center men and to take our pain and put it through to the back. And after a while, we give and we can be there. But fucking hell, like, I'm going through shit too. The amount of times I've interacted with people, men, and this is not to bash, it's just to speak on my experience where I'm literally in pain. And even in the conversation, there's an unspoken expectation and sometimes spoken expectation that I'm supposed to now take the pain. And a lot of the time, the pain is actually caused by the male that I'm talking to. And yet there's an expectation that I'm supposed to take my pain and put it over here and then make sure he's okay. He doesn't even realize what he's doing. The thing is, the reason why it's important for me, and it was important for me to write this article, was because there are well-meaning men out there who genuinely want love, but they're operating on an outdated program that's not even accurate. They're operating on a program that does not serve them. And if I could reframe their perception, then they should be able to see things differently, which should then allow for them to have better, more fulfilling relationships. Same thing with women. So I'm going to read it. I'm going to read the article. I'm going to pretend this is an audiobook. And then I'm going to stop and explain. So I'm going to be looking down a bit. That's okay. So the article I wrote is called Dear Men, She's Not Base Camp. She's on the Battlefield Too. Here we go. From childhood, boys are taught that life is a battleground. They're told to armor up emotionally, physically, psychologically. They're taught to fight, achieve, suppress, dominate. To be a man means to treat life as war. But here's the catch. Life is war for all of us. Sometimes I wonder if it isn't some level of hell. But I digress. While men are trained to see life as a battlefield, women are thrown into it without the training. But we're still here, taking hits, navigating chaos, performing emotional triage under life's constant fire. We are here surviving alongside our male counterparts in this thing called life. So if you're a man socialized to see life as a battlefield, what role have you assigned to your female partner? Because here's what I'm seeing. You're treating her as base camp. Base camp, the safe zone, the quiet tent, the clean cot, the place where the lights stay on and someone's always waiting with food, silence, and care. But she's not a camp. She's in the war too. Emotionally, psychologically, financially, spiritually. Life is kicking everyone's ass. And while you grant full presence, emotional connection, and support, and bond fully with your male friends, your brothers in arms, you keep her at arm's length emotionally. You want total loyalty from her while reserving maximum freedom for yourself. You disappear. You go dark. You need space. She's not allowed to mirror that. If she does, then she's disloyal, she's playing games, or she's too much. Now, I'll pause here. This is not to point fingers. It's not to place blame. It's pure, just complete observation. That is what's happening. There is a double standard. And I think if you're honest with yourself as a male or a female, and you pause and reflect, you'll see that this is actually true for the most part. But let's flip the frame. You would never tolerate that from a battle buddy. So a battle buddy, when you're in the military, is a person that's assigned to you and you just look after each other while you're in war. It's your battle buddy. The equals. We're both in war, both in battle, go through shit together. If the other person gets harmed, you go and you take care of their wounds, right? Like they're not your nurse. They're going through the battle with you, but both parties are equipped to help each other get through things. Okay? You would never go into combat with somebody who ghosts mid-mission. You would never call a man loyal who vanishes under pressure. So why is that acceptable in love? Why is that acceptable for women? Why do you give your male friends respect, loyalty, and discipline, and give women ambiguity and demands? You can disconnect at a whim, focus on your own needs, center yourself, and she's always supposed to be there waiting for you to come back. But when a woman finally walks away after your consistent emotional abandonment, you call that proof that she never loved you. No, her leaving is proof that you never showed up fully. You left her alone in the field with little intel, little connection, no depth. And when she called out for her battle buddy, when she asked you to stay in the fight with her, you called her needy. You can't expect someone to survive war alone and then blame them for building their own extraction route. If you want loyalty like you get from your brothers, then offer her the presents that you give to them. Because if your partner is always positioned as the medic, the caretaker, the emotional mule for your silence, then that's not a partner. She's not even your peer. She's a background character in your survival story. Part 2. Invisible damage is still damage. Let's get one thing clear. Just because you can't see a wound doesn't mean it's not painful. Just because you can't see a wound doesn't mean it isn't painful. That's the premise behind PTSD. Trauma that can't be stitched or x-rayed. Psychological fragmentation that takes out more soldiers after a battle than during it. So tell me, why is emotional pain treated like a weakness? If I say, I'm in pain right now, I'm upset, I am disappointed, I feel abandoned, why does it sound less important when it's coming from a woman's voice? Why are women labeled dramatic for expressing the same symptoms you watch your brothers drink themselves into silence over? If you've ever lost a friend to self-harm, if you've ever watched a friend drink or drug himself into oblivion and attempts to dull the pain that accompanies existence, then you know how destructive emotional damage is. And yet, when your partner asks for emotional presence, when she breaks down or needs reassurance, you freeze. You label her a problem. You ghost. You disconnect. You walk away. That is abandonment in the field. But you do know how to handle pressure. You've done it for your friends, your male friends. When your buddy calls stressed at 2 o'clock in the morning, you answer, you listen, you show up. So why do you grow cold when she's bleeding emotionally? If she were a male friend calling for help, you'd stabilize the field. You'd assess the threat. You would communicate. You'd sit beside your brother and you would say, I got you. Why don't you treat her pain as real? And at this point, I'm not accusing. I want you to ask, what is it about this fucked up society that we found ourselves in that has made it so you can't hear her? Because if you can speak to that, you can understand why men or women are having a hard time talking to each other, understanding each other, which is just increasing, not just a male loneliness epidemic, everyone's fucking lonely. And that's the worst thing you can be in this reality. We are meant to partner with each other and go through this thing with a partner, with an equal. But something's off. And more marriages are ending in divorce because of this right here. Because of this expectation, because of exactly what it is that I'm talking about. And women are getting tired and men are getting tired. And everyone's just shutting down. It's not our fault. It's the powers that be that have created the system that serves no one. It serves no one. In the long run, the patriarchy is just as painful and harmful to men as it is to women, just in different ways. Carry on. You think her crying is chaos. She's reading your silence as rejection. Every time she turns to you for support when life kicks her down and you disconnect because you find emotions overwhelming, that's a wound you've added to her pain. Why does her pain only have to be physical for you to respond? And why do you consistently expect her to set her problems aside to center yours? Once again, that's not accusation. I want you to pause and ask yourself, who programmed you to do that? because that's what it means to be a man. And that's what it means to be a woman. Bullshit. We're human. We're going through this together at the same time. It's not each other. It's us against the world. That's how it should be. Again, if you still think emotional pain is weakness, answer this. So many of our strongest friends are still haunted, not by physical wounds that have long since scarred over, but by memories that haunt them while they sleep. That's emotional damage. And your woman has been enduring that mostly in silence for years. Because every time she goes to speak, you redirect the conversation back to you. She has been programmed not to burden you with her problems. She has been told you can't handle her feelings because apparently men aren't emotional creatures. Bullshit. Some of the strongest men amongst us, members of the warrior class, are some of the most deeply emotional humans in our society. They feel things heavily, though they're socialized to only speak of their pain when inebriated or in a war zone. So why did she leave? She left because you expected blind loyalty while offering absence in return. She left because you kept repressing your humanity and calling it stoicism, because you built a relationship on your terms and expected her to stand in service to you, and you called it mutual. You wouldn't go into combat with someone who disappears during ops. So why is it okay to go silent in love? You say you trust your brothers with your life. Did you ever build a framework strong enough where you could do the same with your woman? When a woman cries next to you, you pull away as if her emotions are more dangerous than bullets. You didn't need to cry with her, but you did need to stay in the room. That's presence. Because loyalty without presence is performance, and presence without clarity is confusion. She needed more than your silence. She needed to know you weren't just surviving beside her, but fighting with her. A lot of men treat women like base camp. She's the safe space you return to, the clean sheets, the stocked fridge, the soft body, the stable ground. And she's very willing to provide you with that. But where does she go when she needs rest? Who does she go to when she needs healing? I'll say it again. She's been fighting too, without much armor, without much backup, without a rank or a ribbon to show for it. She's had to process your silences, decode your withdrawals, hold the line for both you and her while you figure it out. And she still shows up. What if she wasn't built to be the soft space you collapse into? What if she was meant to be your equal? What if you had carried ammo together? What if you had run recon together? What if you had mapped out the terrain emotionally, spiritually, logistically together? What if you fought beside her in this war of life? If you want a woman who can walk beside you, plan beside you, bleed beside you, you have to treat her like a fellow soldier, not a shelter. And that means communicate like you would in the field, debrief like you would after a mission, protect her emotionally like you would physically. Because if she's in the fight with you, she deserves your full operational respect. Let me talk to the men who know how to operate under pressure. You know how to assess risk in a room, scan for threats, triage on the fire, contain a destabilized zone, eliminate what endangers the mission. You know this. So let's run the same framework in your relationship, because when your partner is emotionally bleeding and you extract instead of engage, that's dereliction of duty. So let's break this down into field-ready logic. 1, walking away when someone's crying, that's abandoning the field. You would never leave a wounded brother on the battlefield, so why leave her? Don't leave her. Life is the battlefield. I'm naming it for you. Her tears aren't chaos. They're a signal. They say, we've taken a hit. I need containment. Triage equals immediate stabilization. Triage doesn't mean you have to fix it. It means respond now. Step 1, assess. What's the injury? Trust, fear, fatigue. Step 2, stabilize. I'm here. I've got you. Step 3, contain. Physical touch, stillness, breath. Step 4, decide. Evacuate what caused the damage or repair in place. You don't have to heal everything. You just have to show up for the injury. 4, containment equals embodied safety. Containment is about holding the field. When she's spiraling, you don't disappear. You reduce the threat. You become calm. You make your presence bigger than the pain. Physically, wrap her, anchor her. Energetically, lower your tone, expand your attention. Verbally, say, you are not alone. I'm not leaving. I've got you. 5, threat elimination equals behavior adjustment. If you are the source of the damage, ghosting, ambiguity, withdrawal, then you can control and eliminate that threat. Adjust your tone, adjust your posture, adjust proximity. You wouldn't keep a malfunctioning weapon in play, so don't keep a malfunctioning pattern active. Fix your fire and remove what's causing harm. Love is not lacking. It's undeployed. You have the capacity for love. You've just not been conditioned to deploy it in the right way. You can love clearly, deeply. You've just not been taught how to deploy it domestically. You felt loyalty to your brothers. You felt devotion to a goal or mission. You feel grief that gutted you without language. That's love. You have the capacity for it. Don't let society tell you as a man that this is not what you're capable of. Don't let society force you to disregard or discard your humanity to be a man, because it's not true. It's a falsehood. It's an illusion. You're human first. You could direct it towards a woman, but you've not been trained to because you fear that she might leave if she sees you too clearly. And that is what makes a woman dangerous to your operating system, because you can't command her love. You can't enlist her into loyalty. You can't structure her devotion, but you can hold it by being present. You just have to stay. And for men who are programmed only to fight, that might be the hardest mission you'll ever be given. So let me ask you one last thing. Look in the mirror and ask yourself, based on the way you've been treating your woman, would you trust you to have your back in combat? If the answer is no, then you know exactly why she left. If you want loyalty, choose someone you'd lead beside, and then treat her like a partner in the war that we are all in. Not a nurse, not a fallback plan, a field operative, equal, capable, just like you. Now go meet her on the battlefield, or don't come back at all. It is my hope that that write-up does not come up as accusatory or attacking men. I think that the reason why I tied this episode with veterans and love is because of the observation that I'm finding in this recurring theme that, like, these men, these warriors actually love women. They also fear women, but the warmth and the softness and the femininity, they deeply appreciate. It's something that they crave. They think about the most when they're alone and outside the battlefield. Love is the stabilizing force for them. And it's sort of heartbreaking reading it over and over again, how it's something that they want so badly, but it escapes them. And I guess I just felt like if there was just something that I could say, however small it is, to whomever it is that's listening, that would make them, or you, I guess, shift your perspective in a way that I know that would resonate with you, having been a veteran. And it doesn't just apply to veteran. there are men who are executives. There are men who are, just doing their day-to-day life, but they're also socialized in that same way. I mean, it's insidious. It's in our narratives, it's in our stories, it's in our movies, it's in our books. Like, watch how women are displayed. Man goes off and then comes back, and then she's just supposed to be there. That's the measure of a good woman, is that you can just be gone for fucking 20 years. And as long as she's there waiting for you, that's a good woman. I love the movie Sinners. Any of you guys who have been following me on Instagram or following my stories on Instagram, I've seen the movie like 4 times. It's actually, now I'm not even embarrassed. I've seen it 4 times. And I'll see it again when it comes to theaters. But I notice a recurring theme of the twins. They both left women that they loved for years, 7 years. And it's romanticized, and these are shown as good women because, like, on one end, you got Annie, and she was just like, your body still responds to me while he's off doing the thing, going to war and this, that, and the other, or whatever, stealing from the, the Irish and the Italians, and he comes back because he's pursuing power and money. And she's just in her little cottage, making her herbs and her magic and serving the community. And it's just, but it's like, that shit's fucking painful. Like, she is in love with this man, and he's just left her. He didn't have to chase that life. Do you know what I mean? And then on the opposite, you have, so that was Smoke, and then Stack. He left as well. There was, I forget her name, I think Mary. Now, the reasoning in which he went about it was like, well, Mary was essentially white, and their love would not have worked in that time. But that's not necessarily true. There's plenty of like mixed couples, biracial or interracial couples or whatever, that worked. They made it work. But he thought he was doing the right thing by abandoning her. And then she's shown as just kind of chasing him. And that, once again, is a narrative that's like pushed of what makes a good woman. It's her loyalty. So men will watch that and go, that's when he was able to go out and live this chaotic life. And then she was waiting for him, and that's the love story. But that's the narrative that we are all sold. Watch a show, you'll see it. But like, in real life, she's just gonna find some dude that's there, like, because she's trying to get through. Like, she's living too. You can't get mad if you're gone. That's not a relationship if you're gone. Like, it's one thing if, okay, you're deployed out and you're maintaining a connection. But what I noticed is that, like, these guys in the books that I'm reading, they re-volunteered, and I've already addressed at the start why they're doing it. That's intentional. My response to that is this: I believe in balance. Okay? If you were weaponized and you were sent off to hell, reclaim your life and then spend the rest of your life making, to the best of your ability, your life heaven on earth. If you can have hell on earth and you can be sent off, don't play into what the people who sent you off to die want, so that they can continue to capitalize on your sacrifices, on your trauma. Choose a different life. Choose art. Create if you've destroyed, because that's what you were called to do. Balance it out. Let that be your karma. I had somebody say to me, they said, I'm not going to heaven. It was a veteran. I'm not going to heaven. I did bad things to bad people. So I only can do good now while I'm here. And what I wanted to say back is, fuck heaven. Have you actually apologize for the Christians that are listening to this? I don't even know why. But I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. But if you read the Bible, what it says about what heaven is you're just sitting around all day praying to some God who has done really horrible things. If you actually read the book, I don't want to go to heaven. I'm not going to heaven. If heaven is a real place, I'm definitely not going. And I don't want to. That's probably why I'm here. Think about the kind of people who would actually be in heaven, and then ask yourself if you want to hang out with them for fucking eternity. There is no such thing as heaven. These things are made up. There is an afterlife. And well, not every single, most people who have had near-death experiences have reported that the world after this one is better than this one. You were used as a weapon. Reclaim your life. You don't have to get stuck in that loop. Somebody molded you in a particular way. Now mold yourself. Choose freedom. And also change your approach. The one thing I'll say about myself is I'm stubborn. Whatever it is I'm going through in life, I ask myself, what would the average person do in this situation? And then I force myself to do the complete opposite, because if I'm doing what everybody else is doing, that's a programmed response. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something completely different, and I will choose that. I always say free will is an illusion, but I always add the caveat that it's not free. It's like a muscle. It has to be earned, and it's earned in the way of, instead of you doing things that you would normally do, you do something different. It's a certain type of madness, if you will. But as I said on my threads, sanity is overrated. I'm okay being mad. I'd go as far as to say we're all mad here. I'd go as far as to say we woke up and found ourselves in this world. We have no idea what this world is. Maybe I was always programmed to be mad. I'm not normal, and I've never been. So a pattern I noticed, men, warriors who go off to war and then feel the pain of abandonment without recognizing that the abandonment came because they abandoned their partners. Maybe not necessarily physically, because women can sustain long-term connections. Like, we're not incapable of long-distance relationships, but you have to show up. Engage with her like you would do your male friends. And the fact is that you can sit there and mentally go, okay, yes, I do treat my male friends differently than my female friends. Like, pause and ask yourself, well, why am I doing that? On some level, then I'm not seeing her as an equal. I'm performing this role of whatever I'm supposed to be, or whatever I think I'm supposed to be in a relationship, instead of seeing her as a human being going through life. Maybe not to the extreme of what you're experiencing, but it's still her own type of war. And I would go as far as to say that if you've experienced something that drastic, you're more than capable of helping her through a smaller battle. And that's where your true strength lies. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes when I'm going through stuff, like last month, it's really tough for me. I put things in perspective. I remember like a line from Seneca the Younger, Letters from a Stoic. He says, like, if you took a bunch of people, I'm paraphrasing, if you took a bunch of people and you put them in the room and then you had them list their problems, you would happily walk out of that room with the same problems you came into. So I try to remind myself that, look, whatever it is I'm going through, there's other people going through it worse. And I'm just going to have to go through it. But that doesn't mean that my pain isn't still painful. I may not have lived through a genocide like my mother, or lived through a war like a veteran, but I still experience pain. We all do. And so to be in it, in this reality, to be awake and aware and conscious at the same time, right now, is to understand the human experience. And a true partnership is looking at somebody else and saying, I'll be there for you. If you're here for me too, da, 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 da. Yeah, that's why I do the podcast. That's why I paint. Just add a bit of beauty. One of my favorite comments I get from people is when they say, one, you made me think, which I love. And then the second thing is, I'm so happy that you shared this with me because I thought I was alone. We're not alone. We're surrounded by 8 billion people. We're all going through some crazy shit. We have no idea what the fuck we're doing. But maybe we should take a step back and ask ourselves, well, why do we move in certain ways? And then maybe it's time to reclaim some sense of will and purpose over your own mind and change the way you approach things. Do something different. If you want something different, if you want to break from the loop, if you want to break from the programming, do something different. Anyway, that's enough of that. I promised you guys, at least those who follow my Insta stories, that I was going to do an episode about how there could be AI agents sent by an ASI in the future living amongst us now in the present. That sounds wild, doesn't it? Biological AI agents. And they don't really know. But I think this was really important. So next week's episode, I'll talk about that. Anyway, thanks for watching.